Hi everyone. Today I'm in conversation with Sejal Desai. Sejal is Executive Director at Akanksha Education Fund, and she's based out of Dallas in the US. Thank you so much for joining me today, Sejal, especially with the whole time difference situation that we're having to deal with. But anyways, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Payal.
So, Sejal, before we actually start talking about Akanksha and how you got involved with Akanksha and all of that, just a little background to you, your personal journey until you got to the point of becoming a part of Akanksha.
Yeah, no, happy to provide that. So I was born in Mumbai, Payal, and about 5 months old when I moved to Chicago. And the first 8 years of my life was spent with some back and forth between India and the US, with stints in Surat and Springfield until we finally settled in Mumbai, a place which I passionately now call home alongside Dallas, where I live now. I'm an only child, and my parents raised me, to be fairly independent. I loved to dance. All I ever wanted to be when I was young was a dancer. And somewhere inside of me, that is still, a tucked away kind of bucket list thing. But I trained in ballet while I was in the US in Bharatanatyam, which is a classical Indian dance form, while I was in India. I performed my Arangetram, which is an important debut recital and, a very, a crucial sort of milestone in a dancer's life when I was about 19. And also performed at various different festivals. And honestly, I really thought that is the route I was going to take because I wanted to pursue a master's and later a PhD in performing arts. But my life took me down a very different and kind of a more practical career path, if you will, which I also loved to sort of learn, to pour my heart into, if you will. So I trained to be I'm a chartered accountant as well as an MBA by training. And my work ended up involving, accounting, audit, tax, cross-border M&A, entrepreneurship, and venture capital. So a far cry from, being a dancer, if you will. Before I fully committed, to the world of nonprofit about a decade ago. So that was kind of my journey. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is that when SevaYatra happened?
That's about the time when SevaYatra happened. Yes, yes. So about a decade ago is sort of when I plunged into, into SevaYatra, and there's a slight backstory associated to that as well. But yes,
we'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear the backstory. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I'll kind of. Go a little bit further back to kind of get to SevaYatra as well. So while I lived in Mumbai, I remember as a young girl, receiving these long blue forms from school, and they were from the National Association of the Blind, and we were to collect donations from friends and family and neighbors. And I remember going, up and down my 7th floor building, enthusiastically sort of ringing on doorbells and making a pitch to collect, 2 rupees or 5 rupees, or if I was lucky, 10 or 20 rupees. And it was just very exciting.
Fundraising. I guess that
exactly. You got it just right. Yes, that's when I had no idea. But I realized that that those were the seeds for what might end up in the future being kind of a fundraising career. But it was very exciting for me, when kind of an auntie or an uncle would make a donation and I could fill up the form, right? And what I did realize, now looking back, is that it did give me immense joy. And so, so besides that, as a student, I was involved with Hunger Project. And then, over time, whether in the US or in India, I would find ways to volunteer my time with NGOs or nonprofits. And I kind of created a bit, a parallel path for myself, so my career on one side and then volunteering with nonprofits. But about a decade ago, when I was turning 40, I like to think it was a midlife crisis gone well. I decided to sort of make a full-time commitment to the nonprofit sector, and therein kind of began my journey, to being sort of a catalyst, connecting people and companies with nonprofits, both here as well as in India. and to encourage volunteerism, giving, and leadership in the space. And the SevaYatra story kind of comes about with, the fact that my kids were younger. Back then, I now have a 19 and 15-year-old, but they were, I'm talking about 10 years earlier. And I wanted them to really know India, not as an NRI or a tourist, right? But more intimately. And I wanted them to see India, right? All of India, and appreciate it and respect it, right? And a good part of that, honestly, was understanding and empathizing with all Indians, right? And even though one thing I noticed was, even though I was fairly connected to the nonprofit community, it was hard sometimes to organize visits to nonprofits, as clearly they were, resource constrained, right? Short staffed, and all of that. And so when we visited, we ended up being, it would take a lot of back and forth, of course, but then we ended up becoming kind of NGO tourists, which I didn't like either, right? I wanted to make sure the experience was meaningful for nonprofits and, their beneficiaries as well as our family. And so that's when the idea for SevaYatra came about, right? And SevaYatra means a journey of service, and we created meaningful journeys of service for families, universities, and businesses. And then over the next few years, we brought various universities and companies to create short-term or semester-long programs for them, focused on a specific social issue. And then I started to do a little bit of that work in Dallas, which kind of led me to do a long stint at the Communities Foundation of Texas, where I ended up leading an initiative focusing on encouraging businesses to be good corporate citizens. So So anyway, that was the slightly long answer to your question.
No, so that was your transition basically. And then,
Yes.
how did the Akamsha Education Fund come about?
Yeah, so it's funny how life turns out. But coming from Mumbai, I was very familiar with Akanksha's work, but I had no idea, honestly, that they had a U.S. presence, right? Because largely Akanksha funds, the Akanksha Education Funds, presence has been in the Northeast, in the New York, New Jersey area, and I'm based in Dallas. So, but this past December, I was introduced to Ramesh Srinivasan. He is Akanksha Education Fund's very passionate board chair. And they were looking for an executive director based in New York. I was in Texas, so I thought I was just gonna, have a conversation, maybe make a referral or two, and that would be the end of that. But our first conversation went really well. We connected on, on values, on, kind of our thinking around education, and also, the opportunity sounded really exciting. So, we continued to talk. I went through the search process, which was fairly rigorous, but it also gave me, an insight into Akamsha and its work. And here I am, I guess, 4 months into my new job, and loving the people and the work.
Yeah. It's a great family. So what exactly does your job entail?
So, as Akanksha Education Fund's executive director, right in the U.S., my job includes, developing strategic vision for the organization, working alongside our board, fundraising, of course, leading an incredible team. We're a small but mighty team here in the U.S., but also working very collaboratively with the team in India. We develop educational partnerships here in the US, research opportunities, and honestly, a lot of our work is also about creating awareness about Akanksha's incredible work in India, right? And also I was, brought into Akanksha, again, like I mentioned, right? The base currently has been in New York and New Jersey, and I'm in Texas, and part of the thinking for the board was, that it's time to take Akanksha national. We've been a wonderfully well-kept secret at the Northeast. But with me being in Texas and us bringing on some board members in California, we now have the opportunity to sort of, share the work.
Yeah, and to kind of spread your wings, so to speak. Yeah, and
Exactly.
I mean, and the US is so large that if you're able to cover, the entire expanse, I think that's quite interesting. It's challenging, but at the same time, I think it's possible to do. So how you know how do you kind of, because Akanksha is a nonprofit in India,
Mhm.
so how do you create the awareness? Because now you just mentioned that you kind of, you're trying to expand the what would be the right word to use to get
The presence and the
awareness,
awareness.
presence. Yeah. How are you managing to do that?
Yeah, no, a great question. And I would say, this is just like any business trying to, create awareness or build, relationships or partnerships, right? One thing that, works all, very well, of course, is sort of word of mouth, connections, right? So people that know about Akanksha, are deeply vested in Akanksha, trying to sort of connect to their networks, across the country, within their own geography, but across the country, leveraging personal and professional networks, right, of our board, of our staff, of our donors. Social media, is an important strategy. Both, everything from Facebook and Instagram, but more importantly also LinkedIn. It's a good way to sort of start to, get the messaging across. Partnerships are also very critical, in this case. And then obviously, as we create presences in different locations, right? As I mentioned, in California, we brought on 2 board members. We're looking at bringing on more board members, in Texas, but also within these geographies, building kind of an anchor donor base, setting up a young professional, network. We have a robust one in the New York, New Jersey area, but, how do we take that to different locations? Building out corporate partnerships, etc. Right? These are different ways in which we will slowly but steadily, build our awareness.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. I mean, and like you mentioned that, I think slowly but steadily is the right way to go. Yeah, I'm sure, over the next few months, there will you will be able to see it. So what, I've been talking to a number of students and teachers as well back in India, because I am doing this podcast series specially curated for Akanksha, as you're probably aware.
Yes.
So one focus is the women leadership, which seems to be a very, very strong, a strong part of this entire Akanksha conversation that I'm currently engaged in. And so, how do you think this impacts the education? Because we all know that, Akanksha really focuses on education, and there are like 21 or 28 schools, right, that Akanksha has kind of taken over.
27 now, yes.
27 schools that Akanksha has taken over. So it would be interesting from your perspective to see how, the women who are board members or who are in the leadership team, how they impact this and what kind of a change from their perspective is something that is visible and tangible.
Great question. And as you were asking me, this, I was kind of thinking about, from my early conversations with Akamsha, right, and then also actually just knowing Akamsha coming from Mumbai, right. Our founder, Shaheen Misri, a phenomenal, woman and a leader in the education space, right. She's worked tirelessly, for 30 years, right. With this fundamental belief that, there is an opportunity to sort of change, right, and reimagine the future for, kids from low income communities, right. And she was a college student when she got this going, right. So I think, female leadership, back, way from, our early roots, right, has been, very critical and strong. And then over time, obviously, continuing to have women in our senior leadership, but also across the board, right. I think the other thing that is also critical is within Akanksha schools, we try to maintain that 50-50 girl-boy ratio, right. As we're bringing, students in. And as you know, right, the challenges for girls, right, are far more significant than for our boy students, coming to school, etc. And so having female role models is so critical, right, out in the community. Many of our social workers are women as well. They're the ones in developing relationships with parents and with communities. And what I do believe, is that women, as women, right, we bring certain skills, and two of those two elements that always, stick out to me a little bit more, are, our nurturing nature as well as ability to empathize, right? And I think those two qualities, beyond being, incredible women leaders, kind of provides a balance, right, and provides us a different perspective, that we can bring to the fore. And I think that tends to be, really important. Right now, for example, even in the U.S., we have 11 of our student alumni that are studying in the U.S., right? And many of them are girls. And for them to have the experience of, seeing women leaders here, guiding them and showing them the way, really, is inspiring, right, as well. And so, I think that's where, seeing strong women, both, in the US as well as in India, on the board, through the staff, through our volunteer pool, I think is critical, for any organization. But we have some incredible men as well, within Akanksha. Our CEO, Saurabh, is a phenomenal guy.
I'm actually going to interview him. He's the only male that is going to be a part of my series. So
there you go.
Yeah, I'm quite interested to also hear his perspective. But yeah, no, I completely understand. And you mentioned, that I didn't know that there were 11 alumni who were actually studying. I thought there were just like 2 or 3, but for them to be then inspirational, for the current lot of students, and especially the girls, I think it's absolutely critical. And at the same time, it's pretty, they must be in awe, and the fact that they they probably think that if they can do it, meaning these girls who are, and you said majority of them are girls, then, for the younger lot, there is hope. And that
Absolutely.
also brings about change, I guess.
Completely, right? Because when they see one from their own community, right, because then you can see the future, right? It's always easier to relate to somebody from your own community that has either, and again, coming to the US is not doesn't define success necessarily. We also have a lot of incredibly kind of high performing kids in India as well that are going to Ashoka University, or we actually had our first student go to IIT, and many others, and young that are finding very different careers than what they might have expected their life to be. And I think taking inspiration from other girls that have gone before them, right, is very critical. And one thing I've noticed is that there is that because we have an active alumni network in India as well as here, there is a lot of that kind of give and take that happens, right, through our programming as well. So yes,
and
it's very inspiring.
The ones that I've spoken with, they all seem to want to give back and are giving back. So
absolutely. Yeah. And another thing I will mention, Payal, though, there is that not just for women, but I think having women leaders is also quite important for the boys, right? Because again, it sort of changes their worldview, right, about how women's role in society, right, and how to treat women, how to respect women, right, at a very different level. In fact, just last week, we were fortunate to have one of Akanksha alumni, this young, very gregarious young man called Salman Syed. He came over and spent some time here in Dallas, and while we had some incredible conversations about his grit and determination and Akanksha's support, something that stayed with me was he showed me a picture of three women, in his life, kind of all, right by each other. One was his mother. The other was, an Akamsha staff member. She continues to be an Akamsha staff member, but she was the one who found him on the street, and encouraged him, and continued to support him, throughout this journey. And he went from being a kid on the street who used to again make a living, used to sell books at traffic lights, to now doing his MBA, and in a university in the US. But he attributes it to three women, right? His mother, who gave birth to him, to Caroline, an Akanksha, staff person, and then, Beth, a woman in Utah, who he met in India and encouraged him to come and study further in the US, and is his social host mother right now. And so I feel like for boys, women leaders are equally important to see as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I completely understand that, because like you said, the communities that they come from, the women have a certain place. And for them to actually get this opportunity to see that, to look at it differently, yeah, no, I think is very, very interesting and encouraging as well. And again, a sense of change, right? Just their thinking. That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So I just wanted to ask you, how do you, because obviously, now we've had COVID, the pandemic continues, unfortunately. But so how do you continue to keep going with these external relationships? You've got personal donors, but you also have corporates, right? That support Akamsha and support the fact that and sort of understand the fact that education plays such an important role, and how to continue to give that encouragement. But obviously there has to be financial backing as well, and support, right? So how challenging in these times is it for you to actually continue to get their support?
Yeah, no, very good question. Obviously, everybody, right, has been thrown into this, sort of crisis, mode, right? Whether, no matter who you are, right, you have been, but, obviously for, low income communities, or poorer segments of society, this is hit significantly harder, right? So, I mean, in a way it is, now more than ever, right? The need is so much higher. And I think that, clearly resonates, right, with our donor community. And in a way, what you see is, you see generosity go up, right? People, are able to visualize, and personally, everybody sort of experienced the impact of the pandemic. And so, to that end, the conversation is the same, but in terms of our need, but the need is higher, right? And so that conversation sort of resonates much more with our donors. One thing with education, of course, in Akanksha schools also, as you know, talking to a lot of our colleagues, is that we provide, a holistic education, right? We go way beyond academics. Art, extracurricular activities are very important. We're engaged with parents. Social emotional learning is woven into the fabric of our learning. And ultimately, right, it's really about, not just getting our kids to pass their 10th grade exams, but instead, we're hoping to ignite the potential within every child, right, to be good citizens. And that story, right, remains the same. That determination continues. And right now, yes, our schools are physically not open, but learning is continuing, right? In the virtual setting, it's challenging, no doubt, but we're trying to get tablets for our students. Last year, we provided tablets to all our seventh grade on up and upwards. This year, we're focusing on getting tablets to every child between third and sixth grade, because again, for many of these kids, they're not in an environment where you can take Wi-Fi for you don't have these their homes don't have Wi-Fi. They do not have access to laptops and iPads, and many of them were studying off of their parents phone when they had access to it. So I think the need again, like I said, right, is understood and is critical, and so it's about communicating that. And we did that in the U.S. We had a building resilience campaign that we kicked off in June, and we had a goal to raise $500,000, and we surpassed it because again we just have some generous supporters that understand the need.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that's important, and I'm hoping that through the conversations that this series is sort of uh, is continuing to have. I'm hoping that everyone across the globe is listening and is sort of steps up, with their support. So thank you so much for talking to me, Sejal. It's just been wonderful. I know it's for me it's fine. It's like, I don't know, 8:30 p.m. or something, but for you it's the start of your day. So thank you for accommodating with time, and it's been wonderful. And I'm sure the US with the Akanksha support will get stronger and stronger, and I believe that. And yeah, and if there's anything, any last few words that you would like to say, or anything that you'd like to share about how people can reach out to, because I do have a lot of listeners in the US as well. So how people can reach out to you for Akanksha, please just do go ahead.
Yes, and thank you, Payal, one, for having me on the show, but also for everything you're doing to to talk to our colleagues and learn more about Akanksha and spread awareness. We sincerely appreciate it. In the US, so Akanksha.org is our India website, which I'm sure many of my colleagues would have shared. In the US, it's akankshafund.org. And it's Akanksha, and there's an extra N in the middle that sometimes people miss out, but akankshafund.org is where you can get information to connect with me and my colleagues here in the US. We would be happy to engage, especially if you're in the New York, New Jersey, Texas, California area, but honestly anywhere in the country.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter, right?
It doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So anywhere in the US, if you're interested in supporting us, please do reach out. We also have social media channels, so you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, as well as LinkedIn. You're also welcome to to reach out to my personal LinkedIn channel as well, and I'm happy to connect that way as well. But we are looking to spread Akanksha's great work, and create opportunities, for the students to obviously have pathways out of poverty, but more importantly for individuals, in the US, for example, that or anywhere in the world that are looking to, to play a part, right, to play a role in this transformative work, to find that medium, to find that platform. As well, right, and become an engaged supporter or donor with us. So look forward to it. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Sejal. Thank you. Lovely talking to you.
Nice talking to you too.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye, Payal.
Bye. Bye.